Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about how you can enhance the look of your model kits by using Waterslide decals. Now, Waterslide decals are usually identifiable by the fact that they're normally printed on this light blue colored paper, and then they're also not able to just be peeled up by hand or by tweezers. You're going to have to use water to separate them. That's where they get their name. Now, the tools you're going to need for this are going to include a sharp knife as well as some tweezers, and it would be good if these are also sharp pointed ones. Then we're just going to need some standard cotton swabs or Q-tips here as well. Typically you only need one. Then of course we're also going to need some water naturally. Just a small cup will do. You don't really need a whole lot. And then somewhat optional but definitely helpful, you can also use something like Mr. Mark Softer and Mr. Mark Setter, and we'll talk some more about what these do here in just a moment. But basically Mr. Mark Setter will work as a sort of adhesive enhancer to help the decal to stay in place. And Mr. Mark Softer will work as a softener for the decal to help it to adhere to rounded or curved or uneven surfaces. Now I've just got a few scrap parts here that we're going to be using for this demonstration, and the easiest is just applying decals onto a flat surface. So that's where we'll start off here with this shoulder piece. It's a nice flat wide open area, and you first just need to start off by selecting which decal you want to place there. And then using your knife, or you can use some scissors, you're just going to want to carefully cut out the decal from the paper, being careful not to cut through the decal or any other nearby decals. And now here, using your tweezers, you're going to want to dip it in the water and hold it in the water for just a couple of seconds so the paper can get good and soaked. Then you can just set it down on your cutting mat. You're going to want to leave it there for about 20 or 30 seconds or so to allow the decal to separate from the paper, and then you can manipulate it. And before applying it to the part, I like to just dab it onto a paper towel to just get some of the excess water off of it. It's also a good idea to moisten your Q-tip before using it. Now, it doesn't need to be soaked with water. You want it to just be damp. And then we're just going to hold the decal roughly where we want to place it, and using your Q-tip, slide the decal off of the paper onto the part, again where they get the name water slides, and then using your Q-tip you can adjust the decal into place. And once you've got it where you're happy with it, just gently press it with the Q-tip, and then you're going to want to roll over it as well just to make sure that it's good and pressed down firmly, but you just want to be careful not to move the decal while you're doing this. But now let's say you wanted to use like a line decal to stretch over like an extended surface, but you're not exactly sure the right length of line that you need. So to place this blue line across this part of the shoulder here, what you can use is just a piece of masking tape first to put over the part where you want the decal to go, and then we can cut that to the proper length. Then go back to our decal sheet, place it either on or near the line, and this shouldn't hurt the decal at all. It should be fine, just long enough so that we can cut the decal to the proper length that we need. Then we're just going to repeat the process of dipping it in water, giving it a few seconds, and then we can go to the part. And now, because this is going over the bend of the top of this part here, here's a good time to use the Mark Softer. And what Mark Softer will do, we'll soften the decal up a little bit just to help it bend and form around the corner edge of this part here, and we can get good flat adhesion all the way across every surface and around the corners. Now, as you're seeing here, I like to apply the Mark Softer before putting the decal onto the part, but it's really kind of up to you. Some people do it before, some people do it after. I just find that I think it works better like this. You can also then apply more after you've got the decal in place as well. And if you find it necessary, it doesn't hurt at all to go ahead and repeat the process of adding more Mr. Mark Softer onto the decal, just if you really needed it to form to the shape even more so. So depending on how extreme the shape of the part is, you might find yourself repeating the process of adding Mark Softer 2 or 3 or 4 times before you can get the decal to be laying completely flat. Now, another example of where these steps might come in handy is on curved surfaces. Now, like on this part here, for example, we have this curved surface, and if we're putting a larger decal especially over this, you might find that the decal doesn't want to lay flat. And so Mr. Mark Softer can be very helpful for these situations as well. And you'll find that different decal brands, sometimes the thickness of the decal can be different, where the thicker decals are a bit more durable, but they don't want to lay flat on uneven surfaces quite as well. The thinner decals are more susceptible to breaking and can be a bit more fragile in the process of handling them, but they have an easier time adhering to uneven surfaces. And so again, the order doesn't particularly matter whether you're applying the softener first before the decal or after, or both, or whether you want to do additional applications of the softener just to get it completely flat on the part. This is a good opportunity to also use some of the Mark Setter as well, just because that added adhesion that you're going to have from the Mark Setter will just make sure that the decal is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to peel up or anything over time. You can also handle the parts easier with less worry that you might accidentally rub the decal off or peel it off accidentally while handling the parts. So next up, we're just going to go over the steps of what you need to do when you're applying a decal over an area that has a recessed surface, like a panel line, like this part here, for example. You're going to want to go through the normal steps once again, using some Mr. Mark softer when you apply the decal on there. And one thing that you'll notice once you've got the decal in place and after a few minutes have passed, that the Mark softer has worked a little bit to make the decal sink very, very slightly into that panel line, but it's such a small space there. So the decal is not going to look completely natural, because realistically it would be on the two armor panels separately, and it wouldn't be stretched over the top of this panel line, which represents a gap between panels of armor. So once you've given the decal a little bit more time to dry and adhere, take your very sharp knife and very carefully cut it along the panel line right there, just being careful not to damage the decal too much other than just cutting it. Then we're gonna go again with some Mark softer, lay that on there, let that do its thing to soften the decal, basically bring the now cut edges of that down into the panel line even further. And ultimately this will help the decal to look like it's actually on the separate panels and it's separated on the same panel line. We can then go in and test this out just with some panel line liquid. In this case, I'm just using some Tamiya accent color and applying that to our panel line here. You can see how this is going to give us a much more realistic look, even with our decal placed over the top of that and cut. Now, one more tip for you guys, just to help to get rid of that distracting shine that's there on the decal. Of course, one thing that you can do is also then spray some top coat over everything. Now, whether you want to use gloss, semi-gloss, or matte finish top coat, it's really kind of up to you, but just using one of these Mr. Hobby, Mr. Super Clear matte finish spray cans, spraying a little bit on here, and you guys will notice then the result after a few minutes of drying and curing that that shine is going to be much less noticeable there from the decal on the part, so it gives it, again, a much more realistic look. Lastly then, I just want to give you guys a little troubleshooting tip here if you experience silvering in your decal. Now what silvering is basically just the decal isn't completely flat on the part, there's some air trapped in there, and how it's going to make it look is like the underside of the decal looks like there's little bits of the decal that's kind of silver underneath, that's where it gets the name. And for this tip, you can do this even after spraying top coats too, it should still work, but what you can do is just apply some of your Mr. Mark softer on there, and then gently with your very sharp knife point, you can just poke the decal very gently, and what that will do is just basically allow the Mr. Mark softer to seep onto the underside of the decal. You're going to want to poke where the silvering is occurring. The Mr. Mark softer will seep down through the very tiny little hole that you've poked in there, and just to kind of help, again, melting the decal to let it lay as flat on the part as possible and not leave any empty gaps that give you that silvering effect. And so that's really kind of about it, guys, for applying Waterslide decals to your kits. It's really a pretty simple process. It takes some time, but all you really need is a few simple tools and materials and some time, and you can really add a lot of details to your kits. So if you have any other further questions, do feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. But hopefully you guys enjoyed taking a look at how to apply Waterslide decals to your kits. Make sure you check out the link in the video description below. Got all sorts of decal sheets like this, plenty more, all of the tools and supplies needed. You can check all that out on the website here at USA Gundam Store. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video here today. We'll see you in the next one.